Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I have some easy and fun Dollar Tree DIY Easter and spring wreaths for you to decorate your front door this year. If you're new here, welcome. Stick around by hitting that subscribe button and ringing the bell for notifications so you never miss out on a new video. All right, now let's get into the DIY wreaths. I love the Dollar Tree has these bunny head wreath forms. I'm going to use that for this DIY. It makes it really simple to make an Easter wreath. I'm going to use also 9 bunches of the lavender that Dollar Tree sells. I have the dark purple, the light purple, and then the white lavender with a little bit of purple in it. I'm going to take one of the bunches and I'm going to start off by using some wire cutters and cutting off the bottom of the stem, so that way the lavender is still together, but the stem is just a little bit shorter to work with. And then I have some floral wire from Dollar Tree. So I just started off with the first bunch, wrapped some floral wire around the wreath, and then I layered another bunch of lavender on top of that, wrapped some more floral wire, and so on until I worked my way all the way around the wreath. The trick is you just want to make sure that when you wrap the floral wire around the bunches of flowers, that you're kind of hiding it inside the leaves and the flowers. So you're still wrapping the bunch to make sure it stays on the wreath, but you're wrapping it in a way that you can't really see the wire anymore. And then once you get all of the lavender around the wreath, you can kind of play with it a little bit to fan out the flowers and move them just slightly so that way it covers all of that wire wreath form and you're not seeing any of the wires or the wreath form at all. And then when you're done, you can just tie off the wire on the back of the wreath, and you can see here this is where I'm kind of fluffing everything together. Now there's so many different things you can do with the ears, but I had some of this nautical rope already. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start off by taking the piece of it and hot gluing it to the back of the ear, and then flipping the wreath around and then winding the nautical rope all the way up and around the ears. And I just hot glued it in a few different places as I was winding it up, so that way I would make sure that it would hold. But make sure when you're doing this that you are just pulling tightly as you're wrapping, so that way everything stays nice and tight and snug and you're not seeing the wire. Once I got to the middle of the ear, I finished wrapping the one ear, and then I had almost enough rope to do both ears with just one package of rope, but unfortunately I didn't. So I had to get another package out and finish wrapping the other ear. I just placed the start of the rope where I had left off and hot glued that down, and then wrapped the other ear and then just trimmed where I had that hot glue. And that was it for this wreath. I think it turned out really pretty for springtime. For this first DIY, I'm using one of the Dollar Tree white foam boards, and I'm getting my inspiration from this floral bunny wreath from Pier 1. It's $59.99, and I thought I could recreate it for a lot less out of Dollar Tree items. So I'm taking the foam board and I'm just using a pencil and tracing out the shape of my bunny the way I want it to look. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of get a little silhouette of a bunny. You can use a stencil if you need to, make yourself a stencil, and then I'm just going to cut it out with a box cutter that is from Dollar Tree. Then I am taking some reindeer moss from Dollar Tree. I used 2 and about a half bags to cover the front of this bunny up. I just used spray adhesive and applied the moss on top of the spray adhesive, and then used some more spray adhesive on top of the moss to kind of hold it all in. And this is so that way if I don't have enough flowers to cover every little inch of this bunny, you'll be able to see moss instead of the white foam board. The flowers that I'm using are 1 bunch of these peachy pink roses, 2 bunches of the light peach pink roses, a bunch of these peonies, 1 bunch of these carnations, and one bunch of, I'm not sure how to pronounce these flowers, they're really tiny, and then 5 bunches of the white hydrangeas. I'm just using what I found at Dollar Tree and putting everything together. So use what you can find and what colors you like at your own Dollar Tree to put it together. And I also could have done this for a lot less than what I spent. I spent $15 on making this bunny, but you could definitely do it probably for under 10. My bunny just turned out to be really big, so you could definitely do this for a lot less with a lot less flowers as well. So I started off with the roses because they are the biggest out of the flowers, and as you saw, I just cut the tips off of the bottom of the roses, and now I'm just hot gluing them into place. Next, I did the peonies, and I just placed everything out before I actually glued anything down, so that way I can make sure it filled up all the spaces. The next one I did was the carnations, and I just placed those all around to make sure that I liked them, and then hot glued those down. And then I did the hydrangeas last because they're the smaller ones out of all of these. They come in bunches, but they're smaller bunches, so I had to kind of bunch them all together. I didn't cut anything off the bottom of these to glue these down. I just applied some hot glue to them and then just glued them to the moss. Then the last flowers that I did were the ones that I couldn't pronounce, and they just came off with one flower head, and those were just used to fill in the rest of the gaps where you could see the moss and things like that. And those ones didn't sit as far down in between the flowers. I kind of pulled them up a little bit, so I hot glued those kind of to the other flowers, if that makes sense, and not so much to the moss, so that way they set up a little bit and you could see them better, and they would cover up more spots and be more of a filler flower like what I needed. Now, once I was all done with that, I could still see some white around the edges where the moss didn't get all the way around the edges. So I took the rest of the half a bag of moss that I had left, and I just applied some hot glue around the edges on the back side to cover that up so you couldn't see any white and it looked clean and finished. Then the last thing I did was take some of this white lace ribbon from Dollar Tree and make a little hanger, and I think this turned out so beautifully for $15 and perfect for Easter.
But we're still free and running, and this day has never kept us bothering. Every day we dance and life's been smiling. We're not young, still drunk in love. Oh, I got you, there's no reason to chasing pain.
This wreath is super easy to make, and it won't take you very long at all. I used a Dollar Tree wire wreath form, and then I used 10 bunches of these light pink colored roses, and I just plucked them off of the stems. I did pluck some leaves off, but I didn't end up using the leaves. You can if you'd like, if you want to add a little bit more greenery to yours. I just decided not to. And all I did was put some hot glue on the bottom of each rose, and then you can see here I just set it in between the wire on the wreath form, and I just went around and did that to the whole wreath, and it works out really good, and it's super easy. Dollar Tree has a ton of these different colored roses with dark pink, light pink, different variations of pink, so you could mix this all up and do all different colored roses, or just the one color like I did, and I think it looks really pretty like this, and you can use it for Valentine's Day or spring or even all year round. Now, when I did flip the wreath form over, you can see all of the hot glue mess kind of, and how everything is worked on the back there. So I wanted to cover that up because my door has a window in it, and you could see that from the inside. So I just used some nautical rope and just hot glued it around that circle there, and that covered it up nicely. You could use burlap or scrapped fabric, whatever you have on hand. I just didn't have any of those, so 2 bunches of these ropes worked out perfect, and I love how this wreath turned out.
We stay here forever. I'm loving
carrot wreath is perfect for your front door for Easter. It's easy and affordable to make. I just took one of these carrot wreath forms from Dollar Tree and some of this orange burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree as well. I took the end of the ribbon and I placed that underneath my bottom of my carrot, and then I added a little bit of hot glue to the ribbon to secure it down. And then I just started wrapping the ribbon up the carrot. And I used a little bit of hot glue to secure each one of the strands until I got about halfway up the carrot. And then once I got about halfway up the carrot, I just kept wrapping without using the hot glue until I got to the end of the carrot. And then I used some more hot glue to secure that piece of ribbon down. Some of the carrot wreath form was still showing at the top there, so I did use another pack of the burlap ribbon just to cover up that top piece. I just wrapped it around and hot glued it down just so that way it wouldn't show when I was all finished with this. Since I didn't hot glue some of that ribbon down, I was able to kind of just play around with it and manipulate it and move it around to make sure that all of the wire was covered up and it looked nice. And then for the top of the carrot, I used 4 bunches of these ferns that I got from Dollar Tree. I just shoved them in between the burlap down in the carrot and it covered up that top part. I think it looks really adorable and it is perfect for Easter for your front door. Again, it's really easy and affordable to make this, and it is just super cute. For this next DIY, I'm going to use one of these trellises from Dollar Tree. I'm just going to use some wire cutters and I'm going to cut off the bottom pieces that you would stick into the ground. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut off the top decorative piece as well. You can leave that on, it's up to you. I just wanted to use this middle section as a pattern for a basket. So if you want that decorative piece, you can leave it on or you can take it off. But I'm going to use some of this white nautical rope from Dollar Tree, and I just took off the tape on the ends of the nautical rope, and it does start to fray and come apart when you take off the tape. So make sure you have your hot glue handy and also some scissors so that way you can trim up the edges of those. I took one of the pieces and I started at the bottom and I just hot glued it around the bottom, and then I just wrapped the nautical rope around the wire form, and then when I got to the end of the rope, I would hot glue that end. And I just left it open in the middle. I ended up using 5 bunches of nautical rope to cover this to make it look like a basket. Once it was covered in nautical rope, I just used my scissors and I went around and trimmed it up along those edges, and I just used some hot glue to reinforce some pieces down. Then I took another piece of nautical rope, so this would be the 6th bunch that I used for this basket, and I took the edge and I just hot glued one side to the top of my basket and the other side to the top of the other side of the basket to create a handle, so that way I could use this to hang up, because this is going to be like a door hanger or a wall hanging that you can use for Easter. And basically this is done. You can fill it however you would like. You can use some florals from Dollar Tree. I'm using these spring florals. I think I had about 9 bunches of these in the different colors. They have purple and like a dark pink and some yellow. And then I just placed them inside the basket and manipulated them how I wanted them to sit. But you could use anything you'd like. You could add some Easter eggs to this to make it a little more Eastery. And then you can take them out, just leave it like this for spring. So it's up to you. A lot of things you can do with this. I think this would look really cute as a door hanger on your front door, or even just hang on your wall or on a mirror for spring. DIY was inspired by this wood curl wreath I found on Pinterest, but I couldn't find where to buy it, so I thought I would try to make something similar. So to get my wood curl effect, I'm going to be using some computer paper because that is all I had. So I just took a sheet of it and I folded it in half, And then I folded it in half again. So I folded it into 4s. Then I just cut along those creased lines so that way I would have 4 pieces of paper and that would create 4 flowers. I took one of the pieces of cut paper and I just started cutting a circle spiral. Once I got to the start of where I started cutting before, if that makes sense, I just cut off that excess squared edge of paper there, and then I just finished cutting my spiral. Once my spiral is cut, I just started at the beginning of the spiral and just started rolling up that paper, making sure that it was tight, and I just rolled all the way around the spiral. And as you roll, it will kind of turn into a little bit of a cone shape to give you that flower look. Once you get to the end, where the spiral ends at and you have that little disc there, that is what you're going to glue the end of the flower onto. So I just manipulated the flower a little bit and unrolled it so it wasn't as tight. You can make it as tight or as loose as you want. Then I just added a dab of hot glue on the bottom of that little disc and glued everything down, and it gave me a nice little paper flower that kind of looks like a wood curl flower in my opinion. I continued to make paper flowers until I got about 120 of them to cover my wreath. So for my wreath form, I am using this plastic frisbee disc that I got from Dollar Tree because I didn't have a wreath form on hand. So I am just going to start on the inner ring and hot glue my paper flowers around that, and then I'm going to work my way outward until I run out of paper flowers. And just a little note, if you're hanging this like somewhere where it's going to be really sunny and you get a lot of heat, you might not want to use hot glue because the hot glue will melt in the sun and cause your flowers to fall off and things like that. So you might want to use some super glue or something like that instead. The last thing I did was attach a little piece of twine with some hot glue to hang this, and I love how this turned out. It's perfect.
Stay every night and day. I'm delighted 'cause I got you. La 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 la.
For this first wreath, I'm using one of these briar wreath forms from Dollar Tree, and then I used 8 bunches of these peonies or peonies, however you say them, and I just pulled them right off of the stem, and I'm taking some hot glue and applying them to the back side of the flower where the green part is, and then just placing that onto the wires in between the sections. And I just placed them around kind of close together. I started doing them really close together, so by the end of the wreath I had 12 flowers left, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to fill up the whole wreath, but it worked out. I just kind of spaced them out a little farther apart, and if there were some big gaps, I just used my hot glue and glued the petals together on the flowers so that way those big gaps would be covered up well. Next, to fill in some of the gaps and make it a little more colorful, I'm going to use 4 of these greenery bunches from Dollar Tree. I got these back in early spring, but I used them for a different floral arrangement, so I just took a few of the bunches out that I wanted to use for this wreath, and I just separated the berries and the flowers from the stems, and then also the greenery from the stems. And now I'm just taking the greenery and I'm placing it around the wreath the way I like it, and then I'm coming back and hot gluing the greenery down. So I placed it around the wreath to make sure that that was the way I liked it before I hot glued it all down. And then I just kept layering and adding more greenery as I went. There's no perfect way to do this. It's just however you think that it's going to look good. Then I took the little yellow berries from the stems and I just placed those around the wreath and hot glued those down as well. I also did the little red or pink berries that were on the stems and placed those in the wreath and hot glued those down. Some of them kind of just stuck in there and I didn't have to hot glue them down, but for the most part though, because it was kind of a looser wreath, I did have to glue everything down, and they kind of weren't glued to the wreath form, they were more glued to the flowers, in between the flowers. So I pretty much used all of the greenery and flowers on those stems to fill up this wreath. I just thought it looked pretty with all of the colors, and I really love how this turned out. It's so elegant and beautiful hanging on my front door. For this second wreath, well, it's not really a wreath, it's more of a door hanger. I'm using one of these flower tins from Dollar Tree and then also some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. And I'm just cutting 2 pieces of burlap ribbon. And this is going to be the hanger for my door hanger. And I didn't measure the pieces, I just eyeballed them. But if I had to guess, they were probably about 18 to 24 inches long for each piece. Just depends on how long you want this to hang from your hook on your door. So now what I'm doing is I am just tying them together at the top into a bow, and I'm just using a simple bow, just tying them together and just playing around with it until I get it the way I like it. And then I did cut the ends at an angle just to make it look a little bit nicer. Next, I needed some floral foam for my tin, but I was out, so I saw some other YouTubers do this. I thought this was a great hack. Just cut down a pool noodle and use that as your floral foam. And now I'm just taking some of these lavender stems and I am just filling up the little tin with all of these. I don't know how many bunches of lavender I actually used because this was from a previous project and they were already cut from the bunches. So I used 70 individual stems for this project, and like I said, I don't know how many stems are actually on these bunches from Dollar Tree, but hopefully that helps if you're trying to replicate this. And then all I did was take some Spanish moss and fill up the bottom so you couldn't see the pool noodle, and I love how this turned out for spring or summer. This next DIY, I'm going to use this wreath form from Dollar Tree, and I have this spray adhesive that I've had for a while, so I am just going to use that to attach some of this moss from Dollar Tree. Again, this moss came from Dollar Tree last year. I'm not sure if they still have it, but you could use Spanish moss or whatever moss you would like. I'm just trying to use what I have, and I thought the spray adhesive would help adhere better and not use a ton of hot glue. So I started off with that, and then I went ahead and finished filling up the back of the wreath with the hot glue and the moss. Once the moss was all covered, I just went ahead and took some of those twine carrots and laid them out all over the wreath, and then I just hot glued each one of them down the way I liked them. And then I left a little space in the center between 2 carrots, so that way I would have a space for a ribbon to hang my wreath. Now I'm going to go ahead and hang this wreath from the frames that I made in one of my Valentine's Day videos with the heart on it. I just removed that, and then I just placed the carrot wreath and hot glued it down, and that was it.
Turn back time, my soul in need of remedy. Don't even know the enemy. When I feel out of touch, can't seem to get enough. Hiding away from everyone.
Alright, so I'm going to start out with the neutral farmhouse wreath, and I'm going to use one of these green wreath forms that comes from Dollar Tree and a bag of the brown floral moss. And then I am going to use my hot glue gun just to attach the floral moss to the wreath, and I'm going to attach it to the back and the front side. This floral moss is pretty messy, but after you are done putting the moss on the wreath, I would recommend spraying it with hairspray or a clear sealer of some sort just to hold the moss on. After I was all done getting it on, I did give it a trim just to even it out. Now I'm going to take 3 bunches of these tulips that come from Dollar Tree. You can use whatever color you want. I just used the white ones. And I'm going to trim off the bottoms of each of these. And I'm going to trim them off so that I make sure that they are still intact in a bunch. So I'm not trimming off each individual stem. I'm just trimming off the bottom of each bouquet so that it's a little bit shorter. Now I'm just going to take one of the bunches of tulips and secure it to the side of the wreath with some floral wire. I'm just going to wrap that floral wire around the wreath and the tulips, and then I'm going to take the other bunch and overlap that on the first bunch and wrap some more floral wire around that, and then take the third bunch and do the same thing. And then I just bent the bottom of the stems so that way they would kind of curve around the wreath. Then I took 2 more bunches of the tulips and cut the bottoms off, and then just placed those upside down opposite the other tulips and secured them with some more wire. Next, I needed to cover up the wire in between the 2 tulip bunches, so I took some of this burlap polka dot ribbon from Dollar Tree. I only had a little bit of it, so I just cut off a piece and wrapped that around the middle there and hot glued it. And now with the rest of it, I am just making a simple bow, and I'm just pulling it through here and making sure that the polka dots are right side in and not inside out, and then just messing around with it until I get it the way I like it. Then I cut off the bottom tails to be even. After I did that, I took that excess piece of ribbon and wrapped that around the middle of the bow and hot glued it down just to make the bow a little bit nicer in the middle there, so you couldn't see where I tied it. And then I just cut off the excess ribbon at the top there. After that was all done, I just messed around with it a little bit, and then I hot glued it to my wreath and dovetailed the ends. Then I took some of this silk white ribbon from Dollar Tree and tied another simple bow and just added it on top of the wreath. And this is how it turned out. I think it looks really pretty. It's very simple and farmhouse and neutral for spring this year. I love these tulips. I'm glad that I found them at Dollar Tree this year. I was looking last year and couldn't find them because I really wanted a tulip wreath. So now I'm glad I found them so that way I can have a tulip wreath this year. For this last wreath, it's going to be bright and bold spring colors. I'm going to use this turquoise burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree and another one of these green wreath forms. And I'm just going to wrap the burlap ribbon around the wreath, just overlapping it a little bit as I go. I did not get all the way around with just one roll of ribbon. I did use part of a second roll to go all the way around, and then I hot glued it at the end just to secure it. Next, I'm going to take 2 bunches of the pink hydrangeas from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to cut each stem off, and that way I will have 12 stems of hydrangeas, and I'm going to leave the leaves on as well. Now I'm going to take 6 of those stems, and I'm going to use some floral wire just to secure them together, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other 6 stems. After the two bunches were secure separately, I placed them on the wreath opposite of each other, just like I did the tulips, and then I cut the excess stems so I had shorter stems so that way they didn't stick out, and then I secured both of the bouquets together with some more floral wire. Now to attach both these bouquets to the wreath, I just placed them where I wanted them to go on the wreath, and then I put some more of that burlap ribbon and wrapped it around 2 times around the wreath and the flowers, and then I pulled it tight and then cut off the excess ribbon. And then I used some hot glue and just hot glued the ribbon down to the back of the wreath. Now I'm going to take this bunny sign from Dollar Tree, and I love the little spring banner that it's holding, so I'm just going to pull that off. It's just on there with some hot glue, and I am just going to hot glue that in the middle of the 2 bouquets and then on the other side of the wreath. Then I went ahead and made another simple bow the same way I did the polka dot bow and added that to the middle there, and that was it. The wreath was finished. I think this is pretty and bright for spring. I love the colors. It actually does match my couches in my house. So I think I will use this wreath on my back door and the other one on my front.
For this first wreath, I'm going to do a floral rainbow inspired wreath, and I'm going to use one of these 14-inch round wire wreath forms from Dollar Tree. I'm going to go ahead and wrap some ribbon around the wreath form first. This is going to help me attach my flowers to the wreath form, and then it's also going to help disguise the back of the wreath form when everything is done so it looks more pretty in the back. I did use 1.5 things of ribbon to cover the whole wreath. For my flowers, I chose to use all of the same flowers and use hydrangeas. So I picked colors as close to the rainbow as I could get, but you can choose whatever flowers you would like and you can mix and match. They definitely do have all of the colors of the rainbow at Dollar Tree for their florals, so you could definitely do more of a rainbow if you wanted to. I just like the pastel colors. So all I did was I just removed the flowers from the stems, and then I just hot glued them to the wreath, and having that ribbon there made it easier to hot glue the flowers to the wreath form. I used 6 different colors for this wreath. I used 2 bunches of each color, and that gave me a total of 12 bunches of flowers that I needed for this wreath. I think it turned out so pretty and perfect for spring. This next wreath, I'm going to use these little wooden birdhouses from Dollar Tree. They have a few different types, a couple with different roofs, and then a few different openings. I'm going to use 8 in total, and I'm just going to remove the stickers from the bottom. They were really easy to get off, which I was super happy about because typically it's hard to get stickers off of things, but not these little wooden houses. Next, I'm going to use some spray paint, and I just have 4 different colors that give me some spring vibes. You can use whatever colors you like, and I'm going to spray paint 2 houses of each color. So once I get them all done and dry, I can go ahead and arrange them in a circle. So I'm going to arrange them in a circle where the bottoms of the houses touch, so that way I can glue them together. I'm just going to use hot glue to glue mine together. Obviously, using E6000 or wood glue would give you a stronger hold, and also if this is going to be in the sun, you might want to use either of those glues so it won't melt. Once everything though was glued together, I'm going to flip it over, and for some extra reinforcement, I'm going to use one of these willow wreaths from Dollar Tree. It's the smaller ones, and I'm just going to go ahead and hot glue that to the back of the houses, and that will keep everything a little more stable. So after I got the birdhouses all down, I flipped the wreath over and I was not liking what I saw. There was too many holes, so I decided to get some of these lavender floral picks from Dollar Tree. I believe I had 2 of each color, the white, the light purple, and the dark purple. I just pulled the flowers and the leaves off of the stems, and I hot glued the leaves down first and then hot glued the flowers in between the leaves because it's all separate on the stems, and I started hot gluing those all around in between the houses, and this wreath started coming together, and I absolutely love how it looks now. It's so perfect for springtime. For this next wreath, I'm going to use the bicycle wreath form from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to use some of the lavender picks as well. I am going to use 8 in total lavender picks. I have 3 of the white, 3 of the light purple, and then 2 of the dark purple. And I'm going to start off by taking one of the picks, and I'm just going to form it kind of along the wheel there. And to add my picks to the form, I'm going to use this ribbon from Dollar Tree instead of floral wire, because honestly I didn't have any, so this actually worked out perfect. So I just started at the top there and wrapped my ribbon around the first one and hot glued it to secure it down, and then I just kept wrapping the ribbon and then adding my lavender picks as I worked my way around the wreath on one side. And then when I got to the bottom and I added my last lavender pick, I just kept wrapping the ribbon around the stems at the bottom there, so that way this kind of looked like a bouquet, kind of like a bridal bouquet in my opinion. And then you can see I'm going to add a sign there, so I just went as far as I could, or as far as I thought I needed to, and then I cut the rest of the stems off with wire cutters, but I didn't cut enough off, so I added a little bit more ribbon there at the end. And then I am going to add this cute little sign from Dollar Tree that says "Meet me at the garden." I'm just going to hot glue it down to the form and the flower bouquet, and then I took the rest of the ribbon I had left over from the spool and tied a little bow and added that to the bottom there in between the sign and the bouquet, and I love how this wreath turned out for spring. This next wreath is fairy garden inspired. I'm going to use one of these floral foam rings from Dollar Tree and a bag of floral moss. I'm just going to attach the floral moss to the wreath with some hot glue, and this is a very messy process, and the floral moss does shed, so make sure after you're done coating the wreath with the floral moss, give it a coat of clear sealer or some hairspray to keep it stuck down really well. To give it more of a fairy vibe, I guess, I'm going to use some twine and hot glue it to the back of the wreath and then wrap it around the wreath 2 times. And I don't know, I just think this gives it more of like an English garden fairy feel. And then I just used some of the fairy garden statues and figurines that you can get from the Dollar Tree. I hot glued one of the little house figurines to the bottom of the wreath, and then I hot glued a little gnome and another little piece to the side there, and then I just used a little bit of the extra moss I had lying around to fill in the gaps where it didn't completely touch the wreath. And then to add some more extra fairiness to this wreath, you have to add fairy lights. So I grabbed a pack of these from Dollar Tree. They're battery operated, and I just tucked it inside of the twine to begin with, and then I just started wrapping the lights around the wreath form. Once I got all the way around the wreath and back to where the little fairy house is, there is excess wire that doesn't have lights on it at the end of the string. So I just wrapped that up as best as I can. I looped it around like you can see here. And then you can use like a twist tie, but I used a little piece of twine because I didn't have a twist tie, and I just tied that around the loop in the middle of that wire there, and then I'm just gonna hot glue that down to the back of the wreath right underneath the house. I hot glued the battery pack to the back of the house, and this turned out to be a cute wreath. For this first DIY, I'm going to use 8 bunches of white tulips from Dollar Tree. I want to make a carrot swag. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any orange flowers at Dollar Tree, so that's why I got the white tulips. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pluck the tulips off the stems and save the stems for later because I'm going to reuse those for this project. So once I got all of the tulips off the stems, I also want to remove the centers of the tulips because I'm going to be painting the tulips and I don't want to paint the centers if I can help it. So I removed all of the black centers and I set those aside because I'm going to be reusing them and putting them back on after we are done painting them. So to paint them, I am going to use this spray paint in rustic orange, and I just laid them all out and spray painted them. You want to do a couple coats and flip them over so that you can get them all covered. And then once they're dry, I just took the stems and I removed the leaves because I'm not going to use the leaves. And then I'm going to insert the black centers back into the tulips and then put the tulips back on the stems. Now that the tulips are put back together, I'm going to go ahead and take one stem of them and lay that down. And then I'm going to take 2 more stems and I'm going to kind of stagger them on the side of that first stem and then grab all 3 of those stems and bunch them together. And then you can use floral wire. I couldn't find my floral wires, so I had this wired twine from Dollar Tree. So I just used that and I just twisted it around. I used a little bit of hot glue to make sure that the wire stayed down and wrapped it around the bunches. Now I'm going to add 2 more bunches of tulips above those first 3, and I'm just going to continue to do that up with the other 2 bunches, wrapping the twine each time and making sure it's secure. Then I added the last bunch right there in the middle and wrapped some more twine and added a little bit of hot glue. And then what I'm going to do is I need to add the tops for the carrots. So I found these 2 bunches of foliage from Dollar Tree. That's just what they're labeled. I thought they looked perfect as carrot tops, so I just tucked them inside the top of the tulip bunches there. And then with the excess twine I still have, I'm going to wrap that all the way around to make sure that it's really secure, and then again using some hot glue to secure it down. And then I just fanned it out a little bit. Now I flipped it over to the back so that way I could trim up the stems from the tulips on the back side. And now I am going to use some of this burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree to cover up the twine right there in the middle. I'm going to make a big bow. You can use whatever ribbon you have on hand, and I'm just going to tie that off and cut the ends. And this turned out so cute. I love how it looks like a big carrot swag for Easter and springtime.
This DIY spring wreath is easy and affordable to make with all Dollar Tree materials. I used these 3 rings from Dollar Tree. I used the bigger one for this wreath. You could use any size you want. And then I used 12 of these spring florals from Dollar Tree. I took one of the bunches and I bent the stem at the middle there so that way it would wrap around the wreath nicely. And then I used some floral wire from Dollar Tree and I started wrapping that around the first one, and then I would add my second one and keep wrapping and keep adding the florals overlapping each other as I went around the wreath. This is a really easy way to make a really pretty spring wreath, and you can take it apart easily since it's only wrapped with floral wire. I think it's beautiful and it looks really high-end, like something you would get from Target or Pottery Barn. It's perfect for springtime. Thank you all so much for watching today. Give this video a thumbs up if you got some ideas to decorate your front door for Easter and spring this year. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.